like to start out, before we get into this, see whether we can just relax and close our eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, and visualize within yourself our beloved Saint Germain. Can you see him? Can you feel him? Can you see the smile of his face? Can you feel his arm around your shoulder? Can you sense his presence? Can you hear him speak your name? It's recorded in volume 25, number 65. I will be taking part of this study. He says, I am Saint Germain, and I greet you, keepers of the flame. Hail, my beloved, won't you be seated in the arms of the Blessed Virgin, for I would speak to you of the alchemy of worlds. One cannot understand one's positioning in life without the very close-up view, nor without the overview. You know, the close-up view is what I was hoping that you might grasp in visualizing this master. You know, it's one thing to say, yeah, I believe in Saint Germain. Yep, I've been around a long time. I understand. I know who Saint Germain is. But does that mean that you know him? Are you really acquainted with him from within yourself? Can you hear his voice speak to you? Is he real to you, or is it an intellectual concept that you've accepted, but it's not really something that you experience? This is very important. He says, one cannot understand your position in life without a very close-up view, nor without the overview. In other words, we need to see how he fits into the whole situation, as well as how you fit in to the total situation which we are in. He said, I would like to show you this day the broad sine wave of cycles that has been proceeding, each cycle wave being a 2,000-year dispensation. And within the 2,000 years also, the thrust of Alpha and the return of Omega. You yourself breathe out, then you breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in. So you have a cycle. And we have cycles upon cycles upon cycles. You breathe out also in terms of the greater period he's talking about. You have a day between 12 a.m. until 6. You have the breathe out, the alpha, and then from 6 to 12 you have the inflow, and you have that momentarily within your own life, and you have it then in the broader perspective. He's talking about here a sine wave. It can be 1,000 years out and then 1,000 years back. It can be 5,000 years out and 5,000 years back. Cycles upon cycles upon cycles. He said in the 2,000-year Piscean dispensation drawing to its close, you see then the thrust of light that went forth from the living Christ. You see the rejection of that light, even in the one full turn of the cosmic clock and the 14 stations in that first 1,000-year ring. There was setback after setback that came initially with the denial of that light in the crucifixion. Mankind suffered a long, dark night when they should have spent 1,000 years assimilating the Word and becoming all that he was. He said dissension, division, and denial created, therefore, a meager thrust for the fulfillment of the age of Pisces, the age of reaping, as the Omega return in the last 1,000 years, now concluding, has intended to bring the souls of the people to the return of the zenith of God by this path of Christhood so set forth. So the whole purpose of Jesus coming when he did and so on was messed up by the rejection, the tremendous amount of rejection that happened, so that by the inflow, the mother side of it, it didn't happen like it should. But alas, instead of forging a momentum of the mother's victory, there has been karma upon karma, not balanced in the first thrust, and therefore burdening the return and the exercise of the equation of cosmic law for the fulfillment of the Christ self in each one. Now we can go back in history and we can show time after time after time that this has happened. And this is why it's so serious, and we need to be really becoming very conscious of it. He said, burdened by this denouement, I went before the lords of karma early on. And throughout this second 1,000-year period, I have attempted to right the courses of mankind and angels, to bring elemental life in close communion with the sons of God through the science of alchemy, through God through God government, through the introduction of induction and the scientific method that would lay the foundation for the bringing forth of further inventions. That by inventions themselves and innovations in medicine and every branch of science, there might be, therefore, the mercy flame mitigating the returning karma and this dispensation, and allowing individuals finally and at last in this century to use the violet flame to transmute all iniquities of this 2,000-year period, and to in some way, by the dispensations of the messengers, introduce to the enlightened ones that gift in the hand, that tool of the heart, whereby planetary karma might be transmuted before the ultimate mandate of the lords of karma, which always decrees at the end of the cycle that this cycle must be finished. This cosmic world must come to its conclusion ere the new dispensation can begin. Now you say, why didn't it happen? We're not only at the end, but into the next cycle. Why didn't this happen? It's because so many people of the light are messed up in the messing up of the dark ones. We have too much interaction, and therefore it's been held off and held off and held off, and this is why the masters have been constantly after us to go out and get a hold of the light bearers who are still messed up in this light and in the darkness. They are messed up. So how do you divide the light from the darkness when you have so many light bearers involved in darkness? And we don't understand this. We don't see this. We don't really see. And what they're afraid of is that finally there's going to be the announcement saying, this is it. Anybody in the darkness yet? It's too bad. But there's been mercy, and there's been love, and there's been the expressions of the masters saying, can we hold on? Can we hold on? And then they come back and say, well, what's your followers doing? I mean, how long can we hold this? Hold it back. He said, for the hierarchies of light are not wont to carry over the mistakes of previous cycles into the next. This is what messes up between the fourth root race and those before it. Before, first three root races came in 2,000 years, they all ascended out. Fourth root race began to mess up by getting involved in darkness. Nevertheless, evolutions that survive these epochs and re-embody with a certain karma and a certain ignorance have managed to pollute certain of the new cycles with the burdens of the past. This is not only our problem, it's the problem of the masters who are trying to bring this thing into focus. He said, I'm here to tell you the dispensations of Alpha. It is indeed the desire of Alpha to see all things come to an end, so that the glory of Aquarius might be a 2,000-year dispensation for the transmutation of all that has gone forth in the entire 14,000 years of this greater sine wave. The hope of Elohim is that the dispensation of the violet flame might be the key, truly, to the everlasting golden ages that God has held in his heart and as hope for this earth and her evolutions. Therefore, you have gathered together in the cities across the face of the earth, and in your calls to me, you who keep the vigil of my service on Saturday evening, each and every one of you has held a balance for a greater calamity that should have occurred according to the psychics and seers even this very year. Yet there has been a mitigation, which is, mitigation means it's been lessening. We've been able to do something that's make it easier. Yet there has been a mitigation by the mediatorship of you who are the sons of God and the daughters of the Most High. Realize then that now we seek a greater dispensation and more violet fire to tend the citadels of the earth, to defend the holy innocents, to secure life and freedom and opportunity for those who truly would do better if they knew better. It sounds like the same old story. Why, even Portia has so told me. And yet it is the ever new story of the glory of God. Beloved hearts of living fire, understand then that though there have been dispensations and though there have been pleas, each year and each month is a new day unlike any other, a new point on the current sine wave of the decades. We come to the close of another year. And I stand once again pleading with the lords of karma. And they said to me, go and plead with the keepers of the flame, Saint Germain, for you know that the dispensation can only come from their hearts and their will to dedicate this final month of the year to the violet flame transmutation of those conditions in the earth which will surely result in cataclysm even in the next 24 months, unless some extraordinary release and momentum of the violet flame and therefore of intercession by the legions of the seventh ray, stand between mankind and their returning infamy. We are living in a time when it ain't easy and it ain't funny. It's serious. But you know, we get so busy that we don't even see the seriousness of it. We live within a vibration that has us all spooked up. We need to begin to see this and not allow ourselves to be involved in that thought pattern of what we are living in. Watch the news only one time. You begin to see the hatred, the animosity, the willingness to crucify all good people and lose a country. Doesn't matter, because their will is the only will. Well, you say, this is insanity. Yes, we have it at the highest levels, insanity. And we need to become very serious about dealing with it. He said, by the infamy of their words and their works, they have set in motion an awful destruction upon themselves. What a pity it is that the light bearers and those who challenge the very citadel of God's laws must be side by side in the field of the world, and therefore seemingly the just suffer with the unjust. This conscious awareness is surely enough to drive anybody into a greater discipline of decrees. When you really understand what Saint Germain is seeing here and sharing with us, we need to begin to see how important it is for us to be serious in our outflow of spirit. Blessed hearts, indeed it is true. We have a great need for illumination to go forth. And you are the bearers of our cup of golden liquid light to those who will surely join their voices to your own, giving the violet flame, if they can only see the truth and understand the law. And that's where you and I come in. He said, therefore, I do plead before the altar of your heart, and I give you from my own momentum of service, vision, and a staying action against the tides of your own forgetfulness, that you might remember and not forget that in the turning of the cycles of this year and every year, what must come to pass in the year next is largely determined by what can be transmuted in the final 6 weeks of the conclusion of the previous year. This is where we are. And next year will be only what is left over from this year. If we can transmute it, and we sure tried in the last 3 days, you did well. You had a lot of fire. Even heard from the field what a real fiery St. Germain service it was last night. Fire. That's what we need. We need transmutation. We need to change the situation. Therefore, to each and every one of you, you who have appointments here and there during this Christmas season, you who will tarry at Camelot or in the teaching centers, you who truly understand what the violet flame has meant in your life, I say, it is vital to your security and that of this movement that you understand that the cycles are tight and the coils are wound tightly. And each measured beat of our step to the inner retreat must contain within it many decisions and acts, all that must come to pass to bring about the proper place prepared, not for you alone, but for the 10,000 whom Londello has called his own. He has called to them since the hour of his ascension, and he has determined to work through your hearts. Some of you are counted among them, and therefore you can realize perhaps that the missing brother or sister at your side is someone of light and comfort and joy, someone who brings in heart and hand a special quality of Helios and Vesta. It is not a joy to be together. Is it not a joy to be together in those moments of love, to perceive in one another some sparkle of the crystal of the mind of God, some foretaste of heaven, some memory of former days, of Canterbury and Thomas Becket, of all those moments when we too served with Arthur and knew him as Abraham and knew him as the eternal spirit of our living God, our loving God. How Moria has been the balance of my own sine wave, as the first and the seventh rays have been the balance for the forging of the foundation and the principles of life, the pinnacle of life, I should say. Blessed hearts, secure in the violet flame, I grant you this from my heart's love, that if you so saturate our sanctuary and our earth with your own aura coincident, this morning, coincidentally with the violet flame, I will see to it that you will constantly hear my voice and my call wherever you are on the face of the earth. Boy, if this isn't something that gives that boot, if we can become so much attuned with that this master, he will be sure that you hear his voice no matter where you are around this earth. It is necessary that you keep the channels open to your life stream, for my channels are always open, and I am on the receiving end of the communication of Alpha and Omega and the Most High God. And I am on the receiving end of the whispering of hearts who long for a greater and greater understanding of freedom day by day. So he's in the middle. He hears what the Father wants, and he hears the crying of those who are desperate. He said, truly it is the consciousness of freedom, one's own sense of self-expansiveness in cosmos, that enables us together to experience certain confinements, as other men would call them, certain disciplines of service that necessitate extreme concentration for the victory. And again, we need to really take a look at those words. When you decree, do you just decree as a robot, or do you read the words as you decree? Do you really see what the words are saying as you decree? Or are we just sort of rolling it off like a recorder? This is very important, because one has results and the other doesn't. While the body and the heart are chained to the rock of Christ in his worship and deliverance and grace of the ages, the mind and the soul can soar to the central sun. Therefore, we understand the meaning of the alchemy of service, and we understand the sine wave of returning karma that is the mandate of the age. You know, it's so tempting to say, well, today I got to be creative today. I really got to work. I just don't have time to do all those decrees. And unfortunately, I was part of those who asked Mother, you know, we're working in the shop down here. We're trying to create new equipment. We need time. We need meditation. We need to see how we're going to do this. And Mother, in her quiet way, just smiled and said, you do the decrees, and in the decrees you will find the answer. We just couldn't get out of those decrees. We just had to decree. Well, what we were amazed to find out was some of the greatest breakthroughs came while we were doing decrees. Just suddenly, boom, oh yes, I know how to do this. And we were able to create a tremendous amount of things which were useful of the need of the hour. And it's just a matter of saying, stop the excuses, guys. Get down to business, and it's all right there. I will give you a clue to the science of transmutation that is needed, he says. It is needed that the ritual of our cloud, yours and mine together, and the decrees to the violet flame be given to each for each century and half century of history, beginning with the very birth of the living Christ, who marks the point of the beginning of the spiral of the light's release and the star that was seen over Bethlehem. Not only the star of his causal body, but his causal body magnified by the cosmic Christ and the Buddhas and the seven holy Kamaros. For it contained the mandate of a 2,000-year cycle and the divine plan for every light bearer upon earth. Therefore, in the beginning, in the moment of birth that you will celebrate at solstice on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, remember that that is the point and the only point of perfection, that point at which he came in to this life. Once the light descended into the nexus, immediately there is the confrontation by the chief Nephilim and Watchers. And this is the reason why we baptize a newborn baby. Because the moment that birth is there, it is attacked. And Mother said, this is the most vulnerable point in a person's life, at the point of birth, where we need right away to surround him with light to protect him. And this is why we baptize a baby at birth. I came out of the tradition where you didn't do such things. You only baptize when a person can accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And so when I first heard of baby baptism, of course, immediately I said, oh no, I don't believe in that, until I heard Mother's explanation. And then I began to say, oh yes, makes sense. I understand. He said Herod himself does seek to destroy the nucleus and the mandate of the age, and therefore you begin that cloud upon the first century, the first half century, which includes the life and those and all those events. And you can understand the cause, effect, record, and memory of the infamy against the light and the Christ of the age must consciously put to the torch by keepers of the flame. And so, after this dictation, we decreed by the hour, taking every 50 years right up through. We took care, supposedly, of a lot of this by all the hours of decrees that we followed his instruction to do. He said, it would be well then to decide and therefore design the remaining dates of this year, commencing from this day, to keep the vigil then of this advent of the Lord by passing the flame and the calls to Astrea, which clear the way for greater penetration of the violet flame and the judgment calls which bind the fallen ones who were there to perform their deeds of infamy. For many of them are reincarnated in this very age, and you will find Pilate himself occupying a seat in the government of America. How can this be? It can be because sons and daughters of God have not united and determined that the judgment should descend. That's a very important concept. We have not decided that the judgment should descend. He said, beloved hearts, what think you? Do you think that it is not lawful for judges to be appointed and to sit in the seat of judgment and to decide that one murderer, murderer of a teenage girl, should receive a 25-year sentence, a life sentence, or the electric chair? It is lawful, and it is accepted by God that that by the interpretation of the laws of the land, judge and jury should decide whether or not individuals who have committed severe crimes, such as the babysitter that murdered 5 children in her care over the period of a few years, should therefore no longer have to live. This is human justice, and it must be meted out even when mistakes are made. And this is the excuse they say, we shouldn't kill these guys because we might make a mistake. Well, if you don't kill them, you just perpetuate the problem. Just like what we just saw in the news. Here is a man picked up a gun, killed a woman, but they let him go because it was accidental. Well, so this man who's already defied the law 3 or 4 or 5 times now can go out and do it more, and other people can follow suit because it doesn't mean anything. When you begin to see this, you begin to see what's really happening in our society. Therefore, what do you say of the commission of the Lord Christ to the apostles who were sent to judge the seed of son of Camara, the 12 tribes, and also to judge the angels, which are the fallen angels in embodiment? Realize then that your Christ, you, the Son of God within you, is therefore one with the Lord Jesus Christ, who occupies the office of judge. If therefore the equilateral triangles of the children of the light below do not become congruent with the Lord Christ and his judgments, those who ought to be judged are not judged. And therefore there is the perpetuation of the record, the infamy. The transmutation is not come. And therefore you understand, when you do not exercise the office of judgment, then the Lord God through Elohim delivers the judgment, which you ought to have delivered yourselves through nature. So when you see something, you need to call it. You need to, other masters have said, inform the master, inform God, write the letter. Look what's happening. This is what's happening here. So that can be on the record. Now we are on the brink of earth changes and cataclysm because those who are the Nephilim and the Watchers, who are enthroned in seats of power, have not been overthrown, have not been bound, have not been boycotted, have not been cast down. Have you, in your reading of the news, have you ever sat back and said, this is mental illness. This is literally craziness. And this is happening at the highest level. You say, how can anybody stand and say this? What they're saying. It's because they are who they are showing themselves to be. And we need to see this, and we need to call it. He said thus, how do we break the momentum, where there is an amalgamation of good and evil in civilization. How do you break it? How do you stop this thing? I mean, we raise our children and they get involved in this and that and the other thing, get involved in all kinds of messes. How do you stop it? How do you work with this? Then all comes tumbling down for the breaking of the matrix and the judgment of the seed of the wicked. As with all things, time itself is on the side of the light bearers, and their time is running out. And again, by your understanding of your role in the position of Christ as judge, you may call for the acceleration of karmic cycles and the judgment of the oppressors of the people of every nation. So, note down who are involved in all this stuff. It is an embarrassing situation even to be a citizen of this United States when you have crazy people at high levels saying the most insane things. You say, where is the intelligence? Where is the heart? Where is this? They're empty. Let us then come together to consider and reconsider the alchemy of cycles. For I suggest at the conclusion of your service with the violet flame, you will have something to report to me and something to tell one another, a message to deliver from your hearts at a New Year's conclave that was held at Kamala. For you will gain a new depth of understanding of how the chelas of the light can make all the difference in the turning of the worlds. Elohim have come for this dispensation, and many have not understood or even listened to their teaching. This is what's constantly questioned in my mind. We teach every Sunday. How many listen? How many have been in the teachings for years and years and years and have any idea of what's being said? We're not interested. We have too many other things on our minds. I sometimes wonder why do I keep doing this? You spend all week trying to get whatever the master wants to be delivered, and then you look how many people have listened and you say, well, people aren't interested. They're not interested in turning on the computer and hearing. Even if they don't come here, that's fine. But how can we raise people in consciousness when they refuse to actually listen? Archangels have stood at this very altar themselves, almost physical as the great law will allow. And the remainder of their physical chalice become that of the messenger. Therefore, you may say, the archangels have stood here physically and anchored the mighty light. It is time to review. And therefore, between cycles, as you keep the vigil of this 2,000-year period, I do request that you play these dictations in the classroom, so that when your voices have given their all and it is time to take in, you've given out, now it's time to take in, you may listen to their words and find therein new wisdom and an ancient smile smiling upon you, and your endeavor by the twinkling of an eye of God, that you might hear in their messages some word of prophecy, some forgotten morsel of truth that is so necessary for your victory. I have to say to you, the greatest richness I have is the privilege of preparing every Sunday for this. I learn more. I've been in the teachings, what is it, since 1978, 1974. I was there when many of these dictations were given, but I looked down through and I said, wow, never heard of this before, I never saw this before, I never was aware of this before. I tell you, go back over it, get underneath the surface. What we have been given is life-changing, and I tell you, life-saving. I remind you then of the prophecy of the conversion of Mother Russia. The turning around of Russia can only be the turning around of light bearers, and therefore the nation can only turn around when the light bearers have turned around. And the light bearers in Russia are having a tremendous challenge right now, trying to decide what is truth and so on. I am therefore concerned, as you have been concerned, regarding the mere speedy and accurate translation of our work. And I place upon the European students the full responsibility of translations into their mutual languages. But I place upon America, the American student, and others of the English-speaking people, the burden of responsibility for the translation of our teachings into two key languages that are critical and important when the turning of the world be upon us. These languages are Russian and Spanish, respectively. Realize then that the angels of light will fly with the everlasting gospel and will bring it to those whom it is appointed. They cannot carry it if it is not translated. And therefore let us move on, that the people of South America and Central America and your counterparts and your twin flames embodied in Russia might hold a mighty balance. We will see to it that the teachings are delivered if you will see to it that they are translated and published. That's the challenge. And we've had it for some time. And it's very hard to live and ignore it. My beloved hearts, as we look at the world and we look at America and we look at the darkness that the fallen ones have anchored in her cities, in her streets, in the economy, in the businesses and farms, in the corporations, great and small, we see in this cycle, which is an alchemical cycle of the deterioration of matter itself, that the darkness that they have wrought has affected the very weight of atoms and molecules. And in this epoch of Omega's return, Omega's light has been locked into discordant matrices. It is interesting to note this week, as some leaders of the cities have gathered to consider tremendous problem of decay, disrepair. Their attention is on the roads and the bridges. Their attention is upon the deterioration of individuals, the greater increase of insanity, disease, and crime. But all of this, from the physical structures to the road themselves to the earth itself, is the sign of the end of a cycle, of the antithesis of that which should occur. That which should be taking place is the awareness of every cell and atom, is the ascension of every cell and atom. Do you realize that in the golden age, it is the violet flame that renews all structure, all life, that seals the permanency of man's creation and services it and administers life and releases the light that therefore sustains physical objects, matter, civilization itself, by the light that is in the heart of the cell. Now we know anything you put in the attic to store away will slowly disintegrate, unless you love it so much that you keep thinking about it and you bless it. Same way with your car. If your car is only used just to get you here and there and you don't give a root about anything about it, it's going to be rusting out very shortly. But if you keep feeding life energy into it, that car will last you 200,000, 300,000 miles. You say, wow, I haven't even had to do anything with the engine for 200,000 miles. Why? Because you have given it life. You have kept those cells going because of your love. This is the way it is with people. It's the way it is with life. This maintenance of the matter universe will be known on the oncoming golden age that will surely come to pass after the necessary alignment and balance has been established with what men have done prior to the new age. Once we get this thing cleaned up, and either we clean it up with the violet flame, or it will be done by cataclysm. Now when cataclysm hits, and Eamon was just talking about this, he went through this tremendous earthquake. When that's going, we went through one. I happened to look out from my office. I could feel it happening, so I went to the door, and the trees are going like this, you know, as the ripples of the earth happen. It's sort of scary. My little animals just went tearing for some place to hide. And when you begin to see this, what about real cataclysm? We've not gone through real cataclysm. Realize then that many leaders know not what to do. They are insecure, and yet they make their proud speeches and their assurances. They think up new taxes in order to raise the funds to give people jobs and to repair the cities. It's like patches upon patches. And unless the violet flame flow forth from the hearts of the cities, through the hearts of the keepers of the flame, no amount of patching up or expense of money or work projects or the repair of the infrastructure can ever bring about a permanent relief, a restoration, or a staying hand against the oncoming destruction of mankind's own karma. They have not the answers, yet they are the culprits in all civilization who have caused the problem to begin with. They are the leaders of moral degeneracy and decay that lets out the light of the atom itself and the kundalini fire in the partaking of drugs, rock beat, increasing in sensuality, and the visual images of pornography and bad motion pictures, and only convey the degeneracy and the indulgence of life. And of this they have put upon the world. Then they meet together to find solutions to the problems. We see this all the time. Oh, Hollywood was for a while, not too long ago, making all of their tremendous exclamations about this party and that party and this thing and that, this person and that person. And then suddenly the door opened and we were able to see inside the very people who were making all those preachments. And we say, who are you? And I understand we haven't even scratched the surface of what's going to be coming out of Hollywood, the exposure of Satanism, etc. Do they offer a solution? St. Germain says, They place that solution upon the back of the people. And yet another yoke, a tax on gasoline. When the people of this nation have borne the yoke of the Arabs, of OPEC, and of the multinational corporations that have a monopoly on energy and the earth, the prices that the people pay for gasoline, though they may be in the process of going down, are at least twice as much or more than they ought to be paying. There is built into this cost gravy for the Nephilim who are on the gravy train. And so the people are made to feel responsible when they have only followed the blind leaders of the blind. I tell you, the world does not have the solution to its own problems. The ascended masters have the solution to mankind's problems. We have taught them and preached them and dictated them. Look into your files. Look at what has been said. The solutions are there. They remain to be implemented. They remain to be transferred to others so that an army of light worthy of the faithful and true may gather and may be sent as knights of old to the nations to hold the balance. Nothing is preordained. The handwriting on the wall, the visions of the psychics and the prophets and the seers, all can be changed. And any degree of accuracy that has been ascribed to any of such as these can only be attributed to mankind's own course on the treadmill of life that can be seen as the end from the beginning. There is nothing mystical or mystifying about the course of human events, for mankind have continued in their sameness. They have gone through the sine waves, but they have not transcended themselves or the old order. They have repeated over and over again, outpicturing those old records that I trust God through you will transmute. And then the outpicturing of the past. Their bodies become gray. Their brains have become gray. Their complexions have become gray. And they are gray ones, no longer having the life essence sparkling in the temples of being. Therefore you see, that which is read is that which has already been written. And according to what has been written, it can be predetermined what should take place according to the very accurate science of karmic law and its return in certain cycles and dispensations. I read once where one of the great historians said there has never been a civilization survive who killed its own young. And we are killing them by hundreds. So something has to change, or this civilization also will be in the past. According to the law in certain sine waves, these events ought to come to pass because it is in direct opposition to the sowing of the very karma and cycles. A decade past, a quarter of a century, 500 years, a half a million, and so forth. So you understand that psychics and seers and prophets can often contact the very formula of the word that cannot be broken without a mediator, without the Christ, without the person in physical embodiment who understands the alchemy of the age and the alchemy of worlds. Only you, sons of the Most High God, can change the world as alchemists of the sacred fire. You are on stage. It is your opportunity. Without you and your Christhood and your call and the spoken word unto the violet flame, you must understand that nothing will change, and what the psychics have seen may very well come to pass. I therefore call in the name of Jesus Christ for the multiplication of these loaves and fishes, these sons and daughters of God, that as each one represents a pillar of fire, students of light across the world might tie into that momentum, might receive our book, The Science of the Spoken Word, and begin immediately to recite the mantras of the free. Think of one you love the most. Think of your twin flame, or the little child you have not seen in 500 years that is a part of your heart. Think of that one in Mother Russia, or somewhere in the disturbed nations of South America. Think then how you love that one more than your life. And remember that I have reminded you that you can save a soul. And this time I say, not your own, but the one you love even more than self. Blessed ones, each one of you has one or three or five upon this planet somewhere that truly for that one you would lay down your life. Well, I say, lay it down if you will, but take it up immediately. Bend the knee before the altar, but rise again and go out to live for love. For it is love that you seek, love that you desire most, and meaningful love of the heart. And I tell you, the rescue of a soul of light, the impartation of the momentum of your Christhood, as you stand yourself as teacher in relationship to these little ones, is the greatest experience of love that you can ever know. And by your participation in this ritual, you will expand your heart. Yes, you will even expand that secret chamber and the flame that burns therein. And thereby, in the giving of self in this perpetual vigil that must not stop, but go on through the years, you also will become a Christed one. The one who thereby, having given the self, having seen the victory of one or three or five, may turn again, and they will be 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, and turn again and increase the light, and they will be 1 million, 3 million, 5 million. This is the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes by the law of the one. Children of the Son, you once knew this law of the one. You understood how the flame of your heart is the multiplier of your very self with a capital S. How you could place your electronic presence as the masters do for the holding and the comforting, the embracing and the sealing of life from all harm. You can do this in this hour. You can make the call before you retire to go swiftly, whether to South America or to Russia, or to find souls of light, to gird them up, to speak with them in the heart, that they might know and expect the coming of the light, that they might have hope, and from within understand themselves as the instrument of the judgment upon the oppressors of their nation. There are light bearers in every nation. But we must realize that the people of America and the people of Russia of light are the ones who can unite to defeat the warlords, whether in China or of their own nations, to defeat them before they unleash a worldwide Holocaust. Blessed hearts, the fallen ones of these nations can do nothing when the light bearers unite in active peace. Peace in the name of freedom. Peace by illumination and the violet flame. Peace to all the students of the Ascended Masters. For the message of my heart is from all of the 7 Chohans who have gathered with me to enforce my call and my plea. As you serve with us, the Chohans of the rays, you must understand that our coming to the inner retreat was for the setting and the righting of the cycles of these 14,000 years, which our devotion to the 7 rays represent. Dear hearts of light, we have vested interest in this cycle of transmutation of the first 2,000 years. You have a vested interest, for you and your twin flame, as our own, are entangled and sometimes entwined in these events. We desire to see a cosmic graduation during the next century from this hour. We desire to see many liberated to take part in the Golden Age, whether in embodiment or in the Ascended Master octaves. Therefore, beloved hearts, it is truly a harvest of light bearers. Let the dark ones be unto themselves, for the light will take care of them, and the cosmic law and the edicts from before the world began. Make yourselves instruments of the word, but let your dedication be to the freeing of the souls of light. Make yourselves instruments of the judgment, but let your eye be upon the sparrow and the one that has gone astray from the sheepfold, to bring in every soul of light who must keep that vigil there at the place that is called the place of great encounters. Expect them. Expect miracles. Expect to encounter the Lord Sana Kumara, for your heart is deserving, but your mind limits your reward. As for me, my reward is with me, for you are my reward, and I treasure your hearts. And I say it again, your Saturday night vigil has kept the ship of America afloat. Let us keep her afloat, for the holy innocents are yet to be rescued. I bow before the Cosmic Virgin and the Blessed Mother Mary, whose joyful heart I have known as my own. May you also know it, and be with her the saviors of nations and men. With the sign of Portia, with the sign of justice as the sign of the turning of worlds, I yet make my stand and my plea for opportunity. Open the door to unity and enter. Beloved Saint Germain, you are here. You have spoken, and we have heard. Trust us, foe. We are serious, and we volunteer to be on your team. Let the illumination of this moment become so real to every person, not only of here, but on the air and across the world. Let them be affected by the very vibration of your message this day. For we thank you from the depths of our beings.